Hey there, this is Dr. Amanda from StraightSmile Solutions, and we're here to talk about our first module for our orthodontic training, hands-on, for braces and straight wire. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Everyone is going to get a Typodon. It may not look like this, but you're going to get one. And before you get started, I want you to become familiar with the different instruments that you have, and they might look slightly different than the ones I have here. So I'm going to describe them, but feel free if you have these instruments at home or in your office, you can use your version, but you should test them out first and know what they each do, okay? So this is your Mathal plier, okay? It's like basically like a tiny needle nose plier. You should check it before you use it and make sure it actually works. So click it, okay? And it should stay closed. You should also, I always test mine before I use it on a patient, get a tie and test it and make sure you can easily pull one of these little ties off, okay? You can see that? If you can't do that easily, it's no good. Throw it away. So they easily can get worn out, break, so make sure it works, okay? Number 2, you should have something that looks like a pin cutter. It's called a ligature cutter or a pin cutter. You should test it and make sure it works. So get a wire, cut a little piece off the back of it, make sure it cuts. Remember, when you trim this, it's going to fly across the room, so don't do it near somebody's eye, and always have safety glasses on. That includes yourself and the patient. If it's dull, if you can't pay to get it sharpened, get rid of it. Throw it away. No good. So this is good for cutting excess wire outside the mouth or trimming the ends of little things inside the mouth, and we'll teach you that as we go, okay? There's also another version of this that has a little thing to catch it on the end. It's called a Distal End Cutter. You're also going to get one of those. The difference between that and this is that when you trim the wire, it'll catch it and hold it, and that's what you use inside the mouth. So go ahead and try that outside the mouth. You're also going to get something that looks like this. It's going to be called a wine guard. A wine guard's a little more curved than this one, but this is going to be good to hold the wire and push it through the holes, okay? The tubes that are on the molars. So you should practice doing that on your Typodont. All right, that's pretty much what you're going to get. So the main thing I want you to do initially is to go ahead and look at your Typodont, and I want you to practice taking the wire and all the ties off that are on it, okay? So you can do that with an Explorer or a Scaler, whatever one you want to use. They're little rubberized ties. You're just going to go ahead and remove them one at a time. Just remember that you don't want to stab the patient and you want to get it away from the gums. So think of it like you have a patient in the chair, okay? Obviously these are jaws and these are jaws, so you want to do it away from the gum. So practice taking them off. You should be able to untie a patient in about 60 seconds. Keep repeating that until you can do it super fast, okay? And then you can practice tying them in. Tying them in is super easy. I have ties on them right now, they're clear, but basically you're going to go ahead and get this around all 4 corners of the wings. There's 4 wings. It's a donut, and just stretch it around, okay? Again, you got to go away from the gums, and you should be able to tie a full patient in about 90 seconds once you get your speed up. So practice doing that over and over and over outside the mouth before you do it inside the mouth, okay? Now, one more thing I didn't mention. I know you're going to take the old wires out and put new wires in. I'm going to give you 2 sets of wires. One is going to be a 12 night tie and one's going to be a 14 night tie. I want you to try putting in both to see the difference of what they feel like, because your initial wire is probably going to be a 12, a 14, or a 16 night tie on every patient. And you'll get good at eyeballing where you are with the patient and seeing how straight the teeth are. Usually, I rarely use a 12. Usually I'll use 14 or 16. You want to get the heaviest possible round wire on the patient that you can without breaking the brackets. So if you're not sure, it's always good to do it a little bit easier, and go in. You also want to look at your wire and look at the center dot. Now, some brands will have 3 dots or 2 dots on the top and 1 on the bottom. You need to look at, some don't, some have a divot. So you need to go ahead and check out what wires you have. Make sure you're using the upper wire for the upper. It's slightly wider than the lower, and the lower wire for the lower. I don't agree with using a universal wire at any time on a patient because it does cause issues with arch width, okay? You want to go ahead and center it on the patient. I would trim the excess. Don't put this gigantic wire in the patient initially. You want to kind of line it up, eyeball it with the size of the arch. Obviously, it's on a patient. It's a little more tricky to do, but you can kind of trim a little bit with your pin cutter outside the mouth, okay? And then kind of, lay it around the mouth and see where you are with it, okay? And then see, you obviously want a little bit longer than you need to be, and then you go ahead and try it in. If you're way too far, don't jab it in. If it's obviously too long, take it out and trim it a little bit more and then try it again. Don't ligate it in until you think you have about the right length or a teeny bit longer, okay? When you ligate it in, I always start with the centrals first, both on top and bottom, okay? And then I move back. Now, if you start on one side and do it the other way, the wire is going to shift and it's going to be asymmetric. So always start with the centrals and then move backwards on each side, okay? If the wire shifts, take it out and do it again if your midline isn't lined up. So there's definitely an art to that. If you have a super rotated tooth or one that's ectopic, like out of the arch, after you get your initial stabilizing ties in on the midlines, then you may want to move to that harder tooth and then work around it. There's no right or wrong answer. You'll get the hang of it. If you end up tying it in and it's too short, you got to do it again. Get a new wire. And each of these wires cost about $1, so you don't really want to waste them unless you need to. You can reuse a wire on the same patient, but unless you have a OSHA approved way to store them, if you're changing wires, you need to get rid of it and get a new one because that's kind of gross. You can definitely go 3, 4, 5 months in one single wire if you need to. Okay, so your first wire may be in for 2, 3, 4 months, and that's totally fine. But these ties, if you have the ties, they really only last about 6 to 8 weeks max, maybe even 5, depending on the brand. Certain ones last longer. They're elastomeric properties. That's what activates the wire in the slot. So these do need to be changed. They get pretty gross and stretched out. If you have the kind of trap door, the self-ligating or Damon brackets, then you don't have to do anything. So that saves you a lot of time. But anyways, that's pretty much it. So go ahead and try your initial set of wires in with the color that you've been given. Once you get it in, tie it in, and use your distal end cutter to trim it. Go ahead and take a series of photos to show us how you're doing and submit them via email to info@straightsmilesolutions.com. Please make sure that you have at least a frontal, a side, and a side picture, okay? And later for other movements, we may take occlusal pictures as well. But right now, just send me 3 photos once you've done the initial tie-in so we can see what that looks like. Basically, I'm just looking to make sure that you got the ties over all 4 wings on every single bracket and that it's trimmed appropriately and ideally. Remember that when teeth actually move on a real patient, the teeth are going, the wire, as they get straighter, is going to shoot out the back. You have to tell the patient that, because it's going to get longer in between visits. They can either put some wax on it in between visits, so make sure you send them home with some wax, or they can come in for a quick trim outside office hours. It's super easy. Or you can have them use a clean fingernail clipper initially to clip it at home. That's just for emergencies if they can't come in, okay? But do let them know that's going to happen, because it will happen, and otherwise they'll freak out. That's pretty much it. So go ahead and tie in and tie out a few times and send us pictures of your first tie-in, and we'll go from there. If you have a little bit of a harder tie-in, we'll later be talking a little bit more about stainless steel ties or quick ties and how to capture those in our